Oh man, I love a good story and I love hope. Today we have a leader, an entrepreneur, a high performance coach. This girl gets a lot of things done with the same amount of time as everybody else. We're all given 24 hours a day, and she's going to teach you how to structure that time. She's going to teach you how to wake up to your full potential of what God has for you. But stick around to the end. A phenomenal story of God's goodness, his grace, even using a childlike faith to bring a child home. So special, such a special story. So stick around to the end because you will not be disappointed. All that and more happening right after this. Welcome back to the When Words Don't Come Easy podcast. I am Andy Howard. It's so good to have you with us. If it's your first time joining the podcast, I do want to welcome you. This is just a podcast about hope. I'm someone who's gone through personal struggles with mental health, and I always want to push or find someone who can bring hope into your lives. And that's what you'll find on this podcast. 9 times out of 10, it may be just me sharing a personal story from my life experiences. But every once in a while, I'll get a guest on here, and that's what we're doing today. I have a dear friend of mine, Tiffany, and we've had the pleasure of working with for, I'd say, a couple years now. I don't even know the exact time, but let's just dive into that. First of all, let me bring on Amanda. Welcome, Amanda. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited.
Oh, it's an honor to have you. And I guess I should kind of explain to them who you are a little bit. You're a busy person.
Yeah.
You do a lot. You accomplish a lot. And I'm very proud of you. I was going to say she's a wife. She's a mom, high performance coach. This is my title I gave you, but you actually put it better. I was going to say you're a social media guru. But yeah, you're actually the founder of Homegrown Collective. We'll dive into that in here in a minute as well. You're an entrepreneur and as well as a brand new podcaster. That's pretty cool. We'll dive into that as well. You do a lot of things, but none of it happens by chance. And I did want to dive into that. I've noticed you talk a lot about being intentional, which I love that word. Nothing happens by accident, right?
No.
And so if you have a goal, if you have anything, you have to know how to manage your time. You have to know how to go for it. You can't just, oh, I always wanted to do that and then just sit and wait and see if it happens. So let's start with that. One, you wrote it. I don't know if you wrote it or you planned it, you put it out, but the highest performance planner. Let me get
Highest
that right.
potential. That's
Highest
okay. Highest potential
potential
planner.
planner. Tiffany, and I have one as well. I'm not as good at it. I need to get better. But Tiffany will not like leave the house without it. She
Oh,
loves
I love
it.
that.
Yeah. So tell us about that, how that came about,
Mhm.
and more on that.
Yes. So as you said, I run 2 different companies. So I do a coaching company and then a marketing company. And so with the busy life, as you say, I like to
Yeah.
say it's an intentionally full life. But I realized that I needed something to keep me on track, but something that wasn't just a calendar, but also something that wasn't too much time, right? Because a lot of the ones that are more mindset related are like very time consuming and not sustainable. And so I was looking for a way to combine both the mindset piece and the planning piece into a like 5 minute a day planner. And so it was interesting because I had this history of reviewing planners, which is kind of funny. I didn't know
Oh,
that
wow.
would like come full circle, right? Like
Yeah.
in my early years of writing and marketing, I helped other people with their planners, market their planners. And so I got to try out a lot of different ones. And then I was like, I think I can do this better.
Yeah.
And
That,
so I pulled kind of my favorite pieces from each one and put it together, did some research on what high performers needed. And that's when the highest potential planner came along.
well, I would think that would be very beneficial for you, very helpful to get a lot of experience
I
from doing that.
know,
Isn't that funny how God works?
crazy. I
He
know.
gives you the experience long before maybe the ideal even came about.
Yeah,
So
I
that's pretty
never even
cool.
considered it at the time. I just enjoyed getting to like review other ones. And then I ended up just being able to develop from start to finish my own.
Well, so neat. Well, tell me, because it says you're a high performance coach. What is a high performance coach?
Yeah, so I started my coaching journey. Oh, it's been almost a decade, which is crazy to say. So 9 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just was a life coach, right? Like that, you've probably heard that
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah.
And I was like coaching all these people. And I realized that the client I enjoyed coaching the most and I attracted the most were what was called a high performer. And I'd never heard that phrase before. I was like, what's a high performer? But they were basically people who excelled at standards that the average person didn't. And not in like a better than way, just in a way of like just really high achieving people.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, if these are the clients I'm attracting and these are clients I like working with the most, I want to niche down and really like know how to serve them well. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of Brendan Burchard. He's really big in the personal development industry, like really well-known coach. And he did some training for coaches. And so I think that wasn't quite 9 years ago. I don't even remember what year that was, but it was a while ago. And I decided to go and like really learn how to serve high performers specifically. And so he coaches on teaching how to help people with clarity, productivity, influence, courage, and energy. And those are like the 5 main things. Yeah. And he's basically like, if somebody can nail these 5 things, no matter what industry they're in or what they're doing, they're going to be good to go. And so that was what I learned. And now I do habit coaching. So.
Well, I love that. It is very important. Kind of touched on that earlier about being intentional. I was never a structure person, believe it or not. Most people aren't, I would think.
Yeah.
But what I found after being willing to step out and try it a little bit, when we stumbled on our health program that we did, it helped me with the structure. You know, we have to eat every 2 to 3 hours. We're going to have this, and it laid it out for us. And it ended up being so easy having the plan laid out for me. All I had to do was follow it. I was like, wow, what if I could apply that in other areas of my life? Because for so many years, it was just kind of like, well, now I want to do this. And if it's in front of me, I would do it. And then I would forget about everything else and just living to survive the day. And then you look back and you're like, some things I did well, but then there was so much I felt like I left off the table. You're a structure person. You teach people how to be better. So how would you encourage people about structure? And then I know you're big on routines and starting your morning off with a certain way. I've seen some of your podcasts recently. How do you encourage someone to embrace structure if they don't like it? And then what's a good routine or something that anyone can start in the mornings?
Yeah, I love that question, Andy, because I'm very similar. People always think that I am a very structured type A person because that's how I live my life. I mean, I am, that's true, but I've developed that. It is not natural for me. I had a lot of big goals and big dreams, and I realized, very similar to what you explained, where I was like, if I live this reactive lifestyle of just like trying to react to what's around me or letting my life lead me instead of the other way around, I'm never going to get where I want to go. And so I realized that freedom that I desired so much, that's like one of my top values, is freedom. I was like, if that's my top value, I'm actually not allowing myself to be free if I'm not taking charge of my own life and living intentionally. And so all this structure that people see on the outside in my life has been because I really do value freedom and creativity and all these other things. And so what I would say for somebody who's wanting to start structure, who doesn't naturally feel that way, similar to how you and I are wired, is to start small. A lot of people want to structure every part of their life because they're like, oh, I lack structure, so I need structure here, 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 here. And it's like, well, yeah, you probably do. But to start with everything, you're just going to set yourself up for failure. So it's been interesting because my husband's actually on a recent journey trying to add structure to his life. And I've been able to watch him in those beginning stages. And so what's worked for him is he has used my planner, but even if it's not my planner, it can be a notebook. I don't care what it is, but just being able to write down the top 3 things you want to accomplish that day is huge, because I think so many of us, we just make a to-do list. We all know how to make to-do lists. We all know how to make checklists, but then it's just overwhelming because the to-do list never actually ends, right? It's just
keeps going.
And so yeah, and we never feel successful when that happens. It's like, oh, I didn't get it done. But if we can just name the 3 needle moving activities in our lives that we need to do each day, then we feel successful. And the other thing too, speaking of that, is to define what success looks like each day. So, I mean, sometimes success for me just looks like quality time with my kids, just having eye-to-eye contact that day, because maybe I haven't been intentional with that. Maybe it looks like a bigger project, completing that. You know, maybe it just looks like sitting in gratitude for a few minutes because I haven't really reflected on that. Like, I don't know what it is, but if we can define what success looks like each day, it really helps us structure the whole day around that. And then we can feel way more successful at the end, instead of feeling like, I don't even know what I did today. I was busy, but I don't really know what I got done.
That is good. I love the defining your success part, because so many times maybe you had a successful day and you don't even realize it because you haven't even defined what is success. And so then you look at the 17 other things that didn't happen
Didn't get done.
instead of focusing on all the successful things you did or what you did accomplish. And even starting small with just three, I think anyone listening right now would say, I could do that. I could define 3 strategic goals a day or
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, how many times a week you want to try that. I think
Yeah.
anyone could try that and start small. And then what I've found is when you start having success or when you start seeing how easy it is and how structure does help, you can
Mhm.
add to that, but just a bare minimum of on my worst day, I
Yeah.
can do these 3 things. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of how to start your morning, you got a brand new podcast. I'd say fairly new.
Oh
I think
yeah,
within
like
the
it's
last couple months,
barely
right?
it's not even been a month yet. It's
Not
been
even a
like
month. Okay, I knew it
yeah.
was just out. I love it. The whole concept of you'll share like some daily affirmations. It's a quick, it's a punch in the face, like a
Yeah.
3 to 5 minute, just a quick little
Yep.
podcast shot. So anyone can do it. It'll fit. So you don't have to think, oh, I have to squeeze in a 30-minute or an hour podcast. It's quick, but it's uplifting. It starts your day. Please forgive me. I'm
It's
lost
okay.
the
It's called
title
Wake
of
Up
it. So
to
what is
Your
it?
Life.
Wake up to your life.
Mhm.
Love it. And it's available everywhere.
Yep.
Awesome. Tell us how it came about, and give a better job describing it because I don't know that I did a good enough job on that.
No, you're great. Thank you for even bringing it up. So I just started it a couple weeks ago, and it's a daily podcast, which I was nervous about taking on. I was like, oh my gosh, a daily, but it's just a few minutes, like you said. And the whole premise of why I started this is because the types of people I was coaching, and then also the types of people I was working with on the marketing side of the business, there are a lot of similar types of people. They're
Yeah.
both high performing people. It was amazing how they were getting a lot done. They were successful on paper, but a lot of them were just not awake to the life that they had created for themselves. They spent years and years and years working towards this life of success, right? And success is different for everybody, whatever that means. But they weren't awake. They had their habits dialed in. They were able to like accomplish a lot, but then they weren't feeling fulfilled. And I was like, there's something missing here because they're doing all the right things, but they're not feeling awake. And so I felt this stirring a few months ago, and I was even seeing it in my own life. I was like, why do I feel like I'm not really feeling the joy that I thought I would in this phase of my life? And I realized that God wants us to be awake to the life he has for us, not just the life we're building for ourselves, but the life he has for us, which is even greater than the life we can imagine.
Yes.
So I just felt like it was interesting because sometimes, I don't know if you've ever been through this, Andy, but sometimes I feel like I had been in a phase of my life where I was in a really dark place. We adopted children from different places, some overseas, some locally. Actually, 2 are from Texas.
Oh, wow.
Where you're from.
Yeah.
And I want to be very clear that yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
I want to be very clear the darkness was not them. Like that wasn't what I mean by that. And that's why I want to be careful how I say this. But it was more just like the trauma involved in adoption in general is very heavy. And so I had to learn how to walk through that in a way that was not only, protecting them from what they were going through and trying to be there for them, but also realizing like it impacted me as well. But also it's difficult because as an adopted parent, it's not about you, it's about them. And so it's really difficult because it's so common for adopted parents to just put how they feel to the side and not deal with it until years and years and years later. So I spent about 5 years in a place that looked really great on the outside, but on the inside feeling very dark and heavy because I didn't know how to handle the types of things they had gone through in their lives. Anyway, all that to say is I felt like God sometimes allows those things to happen to you because he wants you to use that story similar to how you are to speak truth to other people who might go through that. And it may not be as an adopted parent, but it could just be anyone going through mental health issues. And so I realized that the key to digging myself out of that dark place was to be awake to the life God had for me and not necessarily the life I was trying to create. And so that is where Wake Up to Your Life came from, is just helping people see that God has a plan for them in their life and that he wants you to live up to your highest potential, but in his version, not necessarily our version, because it's so far better. I hope that made sense.
That made a ton of sense. And thank you for taking the time to put it like that, to find your words. I have found that. I would say most people have found you go through something, no matter what it is, and you think it's for you, and it is for you. It happens to you, but there's something you will learn from it. But I have seen as we've shared our story, there are so many people hurting. And we do get in that bubble of why me, look at me, and why did this happen to me instead
Mhm.
of for me? And it's a mindset and it's an attitude. And the more I speak and the more I share, I've seen hundreds of people that are weeping and broken where it's so moving that it's not just for me. Yes, it happened. I'll be clear as well. God did not do it to you or to me. He's
Yeah.
allowed it to happen. But he is now saying, well, it happened. Now what do we do with it? Let's use it for his glory, for his good, to help others. And so thank you for sharing that. Wow. Adoption, I think, is probably the greatest illustration of God's love that I can think of. My pastor that we served for and we worked for as youth pastors at the time, they adopted two kiddos. And I remember one Sunday when he was sharing an illustration of it, and he was talking about the judge standing before the judge and when they were finalizing it and everything. And the judge says, now you do realize if you go through with this and you adopt and you accept this mission, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
he basically said that they have every single right that your kids have because he has biological kids as well. And I mean, basically laying it all out there, and it may have went even to further detail, but it was so phenomenal. And that is what God did for us. He adopted us as his own. The word says, even as sinners, right? Even when we were in our darkest place, when we were sinners, he loved us so much that he sent his son to die for us, to make a way for us to have eternal life. I didn't mean to go down this rabbit trail, but that's just
No,
so
I love it.
beautiful. So beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. And I did want to dive into that just a little more if we can. So this summer, Tiff and I had the privilege, and I'll throw this out there. If you're looking to sponsor a kiddo, man, we still have some kids. We have a goal of 100 kids that we're trying to sponsor. That just means help them get to school, help them get food, help them with so many expenses. Some of them don't even have running water. It is very sad. And it really grabbed our heart. So that's why God gave us the number 100. I didn't just throw it out there. And we're making progress. I think we have 50 left, maybe 40, 45. And we have a link for it. We will post it in the show notes. But you guys have adopted from, and I don't know if some may be from Africa, but tell us more. You said two are from Texas.
Yeah, two are from
So
Texas and one is from Congo, DR Congo
Congo,
in Africa. Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. Well, tell us how that came about. I'm sure there's a story behind it and what you can share, but how did God lay that on your heart to adopt a kiddo from Congo?
Yeah. So it's such a God story. So back when David and I first got married, I think I was like 22 when this all started, which is crazy. I feel like I thought, at 22, I was like, oh, I'm so mature. And so, and I look back, I'm like, I was like a baby. But
We
anyway,
all do that. Yeah.
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so we were newly married, and I always knew that I wanted to grow my family through adoption. That was just kind of a thing. And that was actually something I expressed early in dating David. Was I said, this is how I want to grow our family, whether we have biological kids or not, I don't know, but I just want to make sure you're good with that. And he's like, I could go either way. Like, I'm open to it, but also if we don't, like, I'm open to that too. And so I was like, as long as you're open to it, great. Well, I don't think he realized how quickly I was going to move on that, because we were like barely a year married. And I'm like,
Wow.
hey, the adoption process overseas takes time. We got
Yeah.
to like start the process. And he was a little bit hesitant, not to adopt, but just hesitant to start so early. And anyway, we decided to jump in thinking it was going to take a long time, but we quickly got matched with Evelyn. She's my second daughter in birth order, but first child, and she's
Wow.
11. And we got matched with her very fast, like within a few months, because she was medically fragile and needed to come home very quickly. And so that was a surprise, because like I said, I was thinking we were in it for like a year or two with the adoption process. And it was like, we started it in September. We were matched with her in February,
Wow.
which in that world, that's fast. And
Yeah.
then we brought her home. Well, we actually didn't bring her home till the end of that year, but I went to meet her in October, and then I stayed there the rest of the year with her.
Wow.
So anyway, it happened quickly, but it was actually a pretty scary process, because with her being so medically fragile, she got malaria twice while she was over there, and
Wow.
she was only a year and a half. I forgot to mention that. So that was the age she was. About a year when we started, and then about a year and a half when we brought her home. And so she was very malnourished. She was only 8 pounds at 6 months old.
Wow.
And so we tried to find a foster family for her over there, because we were like, we got to get her out of the orphanage. Like, she may not survive this. And so we matched her with a foster family, but that was so hard just to be over here in try to get all that process going in
Felt
another
helpless, I'm
country.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt very helpless. That was a dark time as well. Again, I was 22. I'm like, I don't know how I did any of this stuff then,
Yeah.
but I was just learning how to be an adult on my own at the time.
Yeah.
Well, this is a God moment too, and I don't want to take up too much time with this, but basically, right before we left, we were told not to go to go get her because the country had shut down. They said we aren't letting any citizens out of the country. So it wasn't to do with adoptions, but it affected adoptions because we could come and go, but the children could not. And so our agency told everyone, like, hey, the country's closed. We don't know when it's going to open. It could be a year, it could be longer.
Wow.
And I just remember the moment it happened and I was like, just gutted. I was like, what? Like, she needs us. I mean, every child needs a home. I want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like medically, she needed us to bring her home. And so I was crying in the car when I got the news, and I told David, I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I was frantic. And then I felt this like peace come upon me. There's been a few moments like that where it's been very, very clear the voice of God.
Wow.
And I heard the word go. And I was like, what does that mean? We were just told not to go, and now I just hear that we're supposed to go, and I feel peace about it, and I shouldn't feel peace about it because this is like anything but peaceful. But that's God, right? When you feel the unexplained peace. And so after I was done being hysterical, I looked at David in the car because he's driving, probably like, what is wrong with her? What's going on? And I was like, oh, we're supposed to go. We're going to go.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? You just said they closed the country. What do you mean we're going to go? And I was like, God told me to go. So good thing, because we did end up getting stuck over there longer than we had planned, but we were one of the few people who were able to bring home our child in a timely manner. Everyone else pretty much had to wait a year or longer after that. And we got her the help she needed. So we brought her home on Christmas Day.
Oh, wow.
My brother's a lot younger than me, and he was like, I think 10 or 11 at the time. I don't remember his exact age. And he was praying that we'd be home by Christmas every day. And I remember telling my mom, I don't want his faith to be rattled. Like, we're probably not going to be home. Like, there was no sign that we were coming home anytime. And I was like, that sounds so terrible, but I'll just be honest. I was like, tell him to stop praying this. I don't want this to be something that he like can't forgive God for.
Wow.
But anyway, on Christmas Day, we came home. His prayer.
So instead of his faith being rattled, his faith was strengthened by his prayers being answered. And how cool is that?
Who am I to stand in God's way, right? But just we do.
Well, that's a phenomenal story. And I thank you for sharing that and for being vulnerable. And thank you for what you're doing. Wow. All these kiddos' lives changed. And I think if you're out there, you're praying about it, or if you've been thinking about adoption, man, maybe that's your sign, because how special is that? So thank you so much for sharing that. In closing, is there anything, because we could probably go anywhere with all the different things you have going right now, but is there anything on your heart or anything you'd like to push or plug that you're doing right now or in the next coming months that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I just think like with the Wake Up to Your Life stuff, I would just encourage you to tune into the podcast. It's a new podcast, but I really like that there's actionable steps. So it's not just like feel good inspiration, which isn't fun too, but it's like, okay, here's actual things you can do to wake up to the life God has for you, and to be open that it may look different than what you have in mind, but it's so much better. So you can listen to that podcast, or even if you're looking for a tool, as you mentioned, the Highest Potential Planner is a great tool to get started. So you can check that out as well.
Well, I love that. And if they're interested in reaching out about even your high performance coaching and everything that you offer, how do they find you?
Yeah, so that is on a new website, so I have to remember it. I think it's called wakeuptoyourlife.co. So I changed the name of it due to matching the podcast. So that's
great marketing. I love it. Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, Amanda, I thank you for your time today. I love your story. I feel like I got to know you a little better today, even though we've known each other for a while. I heard some things I've never heard today. And so thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing. I know it will help so many people. But best of luck with everything you continue to do. And thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye. Wasn't that just awesome? Wasn't that awesome? Thank you, Amanda, for being vulnerable. That is something so many people struggle with, is opening up and just being vulnerable. And I get it, because it is hard. But you know why it's so hard? Because the enemy, the devil, I'll just get a little spiritual here as we're closing, would love nothing more than to keep your story wrapped up, because it will help so many people. There are so many people I know right now hurting and struggling, and your story can bless them. So my encouragement to you today is open up, open up, share the goodness of the Lord, his faithfulness. Even if it is in failing, we learn so much more from failure, I think, than from success. So God can use your humility in the hard times or the trying times to bless others, because 9 times out of 10, those same people are going through something too. So good. Thank you, Amanda, for sharing that. So good. If you haven't got the book yet, When Words Don't Come Easy, it's available. You can get it from andyhoward.com. It's also available on Amazon and available on Audible, where I will even read it for you, or you can get it on Kindle. Thank you guys so much for your time today. God bless you.